Utah's opioid settlements, best described as a work in progress. Hello, I'm Richard Pyatt, and this is Legally Speaking. So far, the state of Utah has received a lot of money from pharmaceutical manufacturers, distributors, pharmacies, and others, but the total amount of money the state is receiving is a bit of a complicated answer, and it's still too early to talk about those settlements with finality. But here's what we have so far. The settlements that have been finalized will return about $495 million to the state and to the counties over different time frames ranging from immediate payment to payments up to 17 years. Of that, $252 million will go to the state, while $242 million will go to the counties. So far, the state has actually received about $69 million, while the counties have received $59 million. It's complicated as the opioid problem itself, and the topic is very important to our state because the opioid crisis is still taking an enormous toll on families and ruining lives as this problem continues to evolve. Let's get some perspective now from one of our top attorneys on the opioid settlements, Kevin McLean, Assistant Attorney General in the White Collar and Commercial Enforcement Division of our office. Thanks for joining me today, Kevin.
Thank you.
So the portion going to the state and going to the counties, can you first maybe explain how that works?
So the state reached a memorandum of understanding with all 29 counties in the state of Utah that divides the funds from the opioid settlements 50-50. It goes to 50% goes to the counties based on a variety of metrics that reflect things such as rates of opioid use disorder in a particular county, rates of opioid use-related deaths in a particular county, and population is a part of what is reflected. The other 50% goes to the state of Utah, which is then to be appropriated by the legislature.
Okay. So we have a lot of settlement actions that sound like they're still pending because we have $69 million in our coffers right now, essentially, the state portion of it anyway, but we still have a lot that are pending. Are there a lot of the elements of the settlements that are ongoing and pending?
There are a number of investigatory targets, I would say.
Okay.
I'm not at liberty to describe who those are until they announce them or until the state actually files a lawsuit.
So basically it sounds like we're not done.
We're not done.
Okay.
Not remotely.
Well, I think a lot of people think that the opioid settlements have been arrived at, and we're off to the races, and we can start allocating the money. But it sounds like this is a really, really complicated process. Would you say that's an understatement?
That's an understatement. It will be years in the going.
Okay, just kind of backing up for a larger view from a higher altitude, perhaps from the state's point of view, at least. Why do you think pursuing these opioid settlements is so important?
I think there are two key reasons. One is the state and its communities need resources to address the effects of the opioid epidemic. We need resources for treatment, for supportive services. We need lots more money than these settlements are actually going to provide. But the second part of it, frankly, from a purely enforcement matter, is the companies that have been complicit in driving the opioid epidemic need to be held to account. That is important.
I know a lot of news has been made over these things, and the Attorney General himself has commented that there's absolutely no way, there's not enough money in the world really to compensate these families. Do you have contact with families that are affected by this by chance and hear their stories? You probably get a little bit of the heartbreak there.
I do, and frankly, it is a very good reminder to me of how immediate this problem is for so many people. People look at the things that we filed in court, they see my name in the top left corner of those filings, and they call me. I get phone calls from families all the time, and it is a very stark reminder of how visceral this is for so many Utahns.
Well, it's kind of cool actually, because in a way that you can get that feeling, because we sit here in our offices and we don't have any idea how many lives we're touching. You file something. I mean, this gives you a chance to really have contact with people and realize that the hard work that you're doing is really making a difference.
It's easy to get a little bit lost in a lawsuit in sort of a professional sense. And those phone calls are such a brilliant reminder to me of why we're doing what we're doing.
And there's so many more young people, or people of all ages, in fact, that are being affected by opioids. This issue evolves. I mean, now we've got fentanyl. The problem is getting worse, but it's evolving. It's changing.
It is.
So when we're dealing with the problem as it started to unfold a few years ago, we're also working with other states in these agreements. How important do you think this unified front aspect is in getting the settlements over the finish line?
It is absolutely critical. None of the corporate defendants that we have dealt with has been willing to come to the table until there's been a large number of states and political subdivisions, meaning counties and cities nationwide, that were willing to meaningfully discuss settlement. They want global peace. And if we can't bring them something that approximates global peace, we simply don't get the kinds of terms that are going to be acceptable.
So from an attorney's perspective, what are the challenges of working on the settlements between working with the companies themselves, the pharmaceutical manufacturers and the pharmacies, and the distributors in the other states? How complicated is that process?
It's incredibly complicated. I would say the first obstacle goes to a point that you made earlier. There is not enough money in the world to solve this problem. There's not enough money in the world to bring back one person whose life was lost. That cannot be done. But the companies have finite resources. 3 companies have been put into bankruptcy based on opioid litigation. And that tells us a story about how expensive and wasteful a bankruptcy can be. If the states work together, we get better terms from these companies. We get better, what a lawyer would call injunctive relief, meaning specific requirements about how they review suspicious orders and how they're allowed to market to prescribers. All of those things come out better when the states work together.
Just to kind of look in the rearview mirror, based on what I said earlier, in Utah for the state, do we have a rough idea of what's going to happen to the settlement money as it comes in? And are we going to do you have any input? Does our office have any input on it, or is it purely up to the legislature?
Our office provides advice to the legislature, but ultimately it is a matter of appropriation. The budget is the legislature's domain. I'm not sure off the top of my head how much has been spent from the opioid fund, but every time that I've reviewed it, everything that has been spent from that fund has been related to ameliorating the effects of the epidemic.
Mm-hmm. Probably a large portion going to treatment. And in the counties, too, the county portion, each county has the ability to use their portion of the settlement money for whatever purposes they deem appropriate. And that would include probably treatment.
Yes.
And amelioration, and mitigation and those kinds of things.
Yes.
So you've been working on this for how long now? A few years?
8 years.
Okay, it's been 8 years in the making. You put in some long hours. I know you have.
The problem started well before 8 years ago, though.
Right. Do you have any idea, just based on what you know about the way that these things are unfolding, how much longer you're going to be working on this into the future?
I would estimate at least the next 2 or 3 years.
Is there anything about dealing with the opioid settlements that you want to say to just sort of wrap things up? If there's somebody listening that wants to, that's eager to know something about it. I mean, the commitment that we have here at the Attorney General's office is extremely strong, and I don't think that's ever going to change because we have the power of the state behind us.
I would encourage people to contact their legislators. That is who gets to spend the money. And if people have strong feelings about what the best ways are to approach this problem, they need to talk to their legislators. We are making resources available. Our office has worked really hard to make resources available. But it is ultimately the legislature that gets to decide how those resources are used. Mm-hmm. I would encourage people to contact their legislators.
Okay. Like we said, a work in progress.
Yes.
Okay. Kevin, thanks so much for joining us and giving us a snapshot of where things are at this moment on the opioid settlements.
Thank you for having me.
Okay. And thank you for joining us today on Legally Speaking. See you next time.